Hi everyone. I This is my first live on YouTube and hopefully this will be great for you because as we are on the last day of July where independence, all your rights, everything, and we're going into voting season, politics. There are a lot of primaries that are happening in August, and then some of the larger votes are happening in November this year. It is important for you to also know your rights as a taxpayer because everybody who pays taxes is a taxpayer, and all of those people have rights. That includes me, that includes you as well. So it's good for you to know what your rights are, especially when you're talking to the IRS or it usually comes when you have a tax debt, is when you really need to know your rights, because the IRS cannot and should not intrude on those rights. In fact, they have it on their IRS website, irs.gov. So I'm just going to go over and explain what your rights are and how it can help you. And just overall, if you feel like your rights have been violated, what you can do and how you can move and navigate through it. So the first right is, and also I want to introduce you guys. My name is Kerrina O'Connor, the owner and founder of KAKE with the K Financial, where we help six-figure solopreneurs resolve their IRS and tax problems so they can run their business with confidence. So usually that is somebody who has a tax debt, some type of tax bill with the IRS or their state that they cannot pay in full, or they have not filed for the last 54321 years. If that's you, please book a link in the bio and let me help you out. So the first bill, right, and I have my laptop here so I can know and keep track, is the right to be informed. So the IRS has a tax code. The tax code is a very, very long, like when I say it's a huge document, it's a huge document of tax codes that get changed. It feels like every year at this point, but especially every 4 years as like administrations change, like presidential administrations. So this last administration had the what is it, the one big beautiful bill last year. So a lot of the tax laws that were there before have changed now. Some for benefits of others, some not so beneficial, but either way, it's changed and it's right. It is your right to be informed. So the way tax code is written is in legalese, where sometimes the average person is not able to understand it. Lawyers can typically understand it because that is their language, that is their living and breathing word. Like it's a tax law, and they the IRS has have like things like publications, forms, instructions, all of those things, so they can break down the code in a way that is easily understandable for people. So that's why you'll see like publications and notices on the IRS website, so they can explain what the code is saying to you. So basically, the right to be informed is for you to know that this is the tax law, and this is how the explanation of the tax law is explained to you. Hopefully that makes some sense. And then the next right, number two, and there's 10 of them, 10 tax bill of rights. And the next one is the right for quality service. The right of quality service is to give you prompt, courteous, professional assistance with their IRS and tax dealings in a way that can be easily understood and you receive it. Now, I'm not going to lie, sometimes the IRS does not get this right. And if that is the case, you can speak to somebody's supervisor if you have inadequate service. There is always a way to kind of navigate through it. On the phones, if you're on the phone, more than likely you might get that courtesy hang up, where they're just like, oh, well, I'm not going to have you talk to a supervisor. I'm going to hang up on you, which is unfortunate, but they do that sometimes. Or sometimes you're talking to somebody and they're being very rude and very combative. I just go ahead and hang up and call somebody else. The only caveat is that you've already been waiting like 2-3 hours to talk to the IRS, and you're like, all right, I'm gonna wait some more. But I think it's better to talk to somebody who is going to understand you than not. I like to, well, this is just a professional thing. We like to take IDs, the names. They do it really quickly, but you can ask them to say it again. And make sure you keep your notes if you're doing it yourself. I don't necessarily recommend that, but if you're doing it yourself, make sure that you're keeping notes of who you're speaking to, what time, their name, and their ID badge. Because all of these calls should be recorded so you can go ahead and try to get a supervisor if they're being really nasty and being really disgusting on the phones. If it's a situation where you're in person at their tax spikes, you can typically just ask for a supervisor to talk to someone else that is maybe better to understand you, because they can cross those rights, but you do have a right to quality service. So make sure you know that. Next is this one, I think is going to be everybody's favorite: the right to pay no more than the correct amount of tax. That is right. That means that you do not have to pay the IRS just because they sent you a letter saying that you owe them. If you do not agree with the amount that they owe, you can contest that. That does not mean you ignore that letter. Don't ignore that letter. You ignoring the letter is also saying that you agree. And in the letters, it'll typically say something like that: if you don't respond within X amount of days, at X amount of time, doing X amount of whatever, you will have to, you are agreeing to this, and you're saying that you do agree that you owe the IRS that amount. If the amount doesn't look great, don't just pay them. I've had so many people just like, oh well, I'm just gonna pay it. I don't know what this is for. Like, no, hold on, slow down. Let's figure out what this is for. If it's legitimate, then you go ahead and pay it. But if it's not legitimate, or you don't believe that you owe that amount, you have a right to contest it. And just understand that the longer you wait, the longer it takes to be able to combat that. So please make sure that you know, and you're moving quickly. So if you are not sure, like all in all, how much you owe, and what the IRS says sounds a little crazy, and this is the first time you're hearing about this amount, please either take it to a tax professional, call yourself and ask, why do you owe this money? And if you do not agree, ask for your next steps. Okay. So the next one, that's a great caveat into the right to be challenge the IRS's position and be heard. So if the if your rights are being questioned and there's objections, like you believe that this isn't, you don't owe this amount. I have a lot of times, I think it happens really commonly with, what is that called, the Obamacare, like the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, they're all the same thing, right? Premium tax credit, it's all roped in together. A lot of times the IRS will be like, oh, we didn't get this document, or we never received this document, where it was actually filed with the tax return. You can just let them know, hey, it was filed, here's my tax return. Again, this is what is filed, this is my premium tax credit, this is my Obamacare amount or affordable care amount, that I said that I was going to have for this year for tax purposes. So if a document is being questioned, you make sure that you have this, we make sure that you're able to submit these documents and you're able to be heard. So the IRS is not just, um, it is a government entity, but this government entity is full with people along with machines that review your documents, review your things, so that you can have your position to be heard. So make sure you are being heard and make some noise. Sometimes it takes, not even sometimes, at least these days, it's taking a lot of time to get your positions heard. And sometimes the IRS will ask for things multiple times and all of that. Make sure you document that. If you're mailing something to the IRS, don't just mail it, don't just free mail it. I don't know, you know what I'm saying? You just put a little stamp in and just, oh, hope for the best. Like, no, this is your tax documents to the IRS. Get it certified. Make sure you have tracking and people are signing for it, and you have the tracking there, and you're keeping track of it. If you don't want to do that, get somebody to help you. The next is the right to appeal an IRS decision in an independent forum. So there are times where appeals will get involved, but you have to exert your right to appeals. It's not just, oh well, I'm just automatically gonna. And there's also time frames in which appeals will see your cause, which is why I said the faster you get things done, the faster you can get things done, like from your letter and all of that, and not waiting. Because after a while, you're no longer able to appeal your decision. There are other options, but your appeal gets distorted because you waited too long. Like I said, if you get a letter, open it, read it, see what it says. So, but if there is a situation where you've said that you disagree with the amount the IRS says, you provided documentation, and the IRS is still saying, oh, well, we don't believe you, or the amount is incorrect, or the documents that you gave, we don't like it, or something of this sort, whatever, right? You can say, I want to have an appeal. And if you are within your time frame, you can get that appeal. Like I said, if you're not in the time frame, there are other options, but you do have that right. And an independent appeals forum will check what you say, what the IRS says, and then find a decision, either in the middle or leaning towards one of those sides. At least more than likely, if you're going to appeals, I would suggest to make sure that all your ducks are in a row, because it makes no sense to go to appeals and you're still wrong. You know what I mean? So, because it's a long, long process. Okay. So, the right to finality. So, basically, there's a maximum amount of time that the IRS can challenge your position, collect on the debt, audit you, when you finish an audit. There's sometimes where there's some taxpayers that they would get audited every single year, every single time, every single whatever. And when they audit them, they have all the documentations in order and all of that. Um, they do have a right to audit you up until approximately 3 years from that tax year, unless there is fraud involved. If there is some level of fraud, it is indefinitely. They can go back as far as they need to, and as long as they need to, if there is fraud involved. And that fraud doesn't necessarily mean you have to do it. If your tax professional or somebody who else that did your taxes put fraud on there, it is still considered fraud. It doesn't say your fraud, it just says fraud. So they can go back as long as they need to. But once they make a decision on that audit, that doesn't mean like, oh, later on I can go audit those same exact years again. Like, no, finality. Like, this is it. This is what the decision is. This is what it's going to be. That's it. And there are some situations where if it seems punitive and they're consistently auditing you and coming up with nothing, it can be considered. You can you can go to the IRS and basically what's the word I'm looking for? Like, petition against that to say like, okay, it might be uh, punitive at this point. Like, it's like they're trying to get under your skin and they have no right to do that. So the next is right to privacy. So taxpayers' right to privacy, like, understand your tax returns. These are your like personal information. You, your children, any other random dependents that you may have, socials, uh, names, personal information like date of birth, address, all of those. Even because they're doing a lot more for direct deposit, bank information, all of that is on your tax return, and you have the right to privacy. So if you're in examination or anything like that, the IRS is only supposed to ask questions as it pertains to what they're asking in an audit. So it can't just be like random questions that have nothing to do with what the tax is about. It has to be within range. So you have a private right to privacy of getting those things kept to yourself. Understand that when things like tax liens and things like that are recorded, those are public record. So if they report a tax lien on you after you haven't paid for a while, that is no longer, you're breaching the right of privacy there, because you have not paid your debt, you have not done anything to resolve your debt. So they have the right to do a tax lien, and that tax lien is public record. As well as if it's a situation of like wage garnishment in some way, they will and they can send letters to your employer if you are employed, also to your vendors, to be able to get the money. They will get the money first before it goes to you. Or with the wage garnishment, same thing. They'll send it to ADP or whatever, Paychecks, any of those like platforms, to get their money first, because you've been ignoring the situation too long. So they're garnishing your wages in that state because you're not in compliance with paying your bills. That right to privacy is not there, because so your employer could potentially get information like, hey, you have a tax debt, because they legally have to send it to their HR, to ADP, etc., to get those wage garnishments done. And then for the vendors, because you owe a tax debt to the IRS is basically like, we can't get you any other way, so we're going to go towards your vendors, take your money that way, and you still have to report it as income. It takes a while to get there, but don't let it get there, because it can. and it's not a pretty picture. But overall, you do have a right to privacy. Okay, so a right to confidentiality, that is the next right. I think we're on 8 or something, maybe. Oh, no, we're not. Maybe on 7. So basically anything, your right to confidentiality is anything cannot just be given to like third parties just randomly, all willy-nilly, right? Even when you call the IRS, like on the phone, they ask specific questions to make sure that you are you, to try to make sure that you are you. Even if you have a tax professional on the phone with them, if they are not power of attorney, which power of attorney is also giving the right to confidentiality to your things, you're giving out that away, power of attorney, as it pertains to the IRS and your IRS like data to a tax professional. They're going to ask specific questions to make sure that you are you on the phone. Even if you call and ask with another professional, they're going to ask you to verify your information, who you are, etc. That may include, depending on what it is, they may ask you what was your filing status the year before, all of those things, depending on what it is. Usually they ask, birth, date of birth, social, uh, your filing status, maybe they might ask you what your AGI is, adjusted gross income, or uh, what your refund was, what was the refund amount if you got a refund, or what was the amount due if you got that, something like that, to make sure it's you. And then for that person on the phone, you have to say their name, who they are, all of those things, and then I give them access to talk to you on the phone only during this phone conversation while we're here. So even third parties, like there's mortgage companies and things of that nature, they will get a 4506T to get transcripts, but you have to sign that over to them. So you sign over to say, yes, mortgage company, I'm going to be able to give you these transcripts on this behalf or whatever. So now like the IRS is not just going to give them that information. You have to sign to say that you want to tell them that. So that is the right of confidentiality. On overall, if somebody just calls, hey, can you give me Kerrina O'Connor's information? They're gonna be like, hey, are you Kerrina O'Connor? No, click. We're not doing that. But if it's a third party and they want your information, you're agreeing to that information. If you sign a document and then you go ahead and fax it, or they fax it, or whatever, then they'll be able to get that. And this is probably, maybe it could be the second favorite. First favorite is always the right to pay the amount of tax that you are owed, no more, no less, right? That's it. That is owed. No more, no less. That's fine. But the right to representation, you have a right to be represented by a tax professional. So this could typically include an EA, an enrolled agent. That is, I know a lot of people don't know what that is, but basically, like a CPA and an attorney, they are able to represent you before the IRS. They are stepping in like an advocate on your behalf to be able to talk to the IRS as if they were you, so you don't get on the phone and trip up. And because sometimes the IRS will trip you up because you don't understand the language in the conversation. So the right to representation at any point in time, even if you are doing it yourself and you're realizing this is kind of above my head and I don't know what the hell I'm doing, I don't know what I'm talking about, whatever, you have the right to say, you know what, whatever, either revenue agent or revenue officer, I would like to exempt my right for representation now, and I no longer want to talk to you, and I want to go ahead and get somebody to talk on my behalf. And you can do that. So that's an enrolled agent, EA, a CPA, certified public accountant, a tax attorney. Those three are typically the ones that can represent you before the IRS. There are some caveats in some instances that can do limited rights, but full rights would be, like I said, an enrolled agent, EA, a certified public accountant, CPA, and a tax attorney, or an attorney, period. But I think you more want to get a tax attorney, somebody who knows taxes. And this right representation, you can get it for something as simple as a notice correspondence. So the IRS is just sending you mail, a field or it won't be a correspondence at that time, like a field audit, like where it's actually like they're coming to your place of business. and anything in between. So if it's a situation where, like I said, you owe a tax debt and you cannot pay in full, and you want somebody to represent you, that is where a person to the right to representation comes in. So if it's too much, it's over your head, get somebody to help you. And this is a professional that you vetted and that you like and that you can work with, because a lot of times you'll be working with that person for a few months, because nothing in the IRS or the government is quick. Next is the right to fair and just tax system. So basically, things like, if there's a situation where you feel unfair, like an unfair advantage within the IRS or anything like that, there is a taxpayer advocate service, and it is a completely free service, and anybody can use this service. So if it's a situation where you are unable to get representation because it costs too much or you don't have the funds, that's fine. The taxpayer advocate service is a free service that will help you. They are independent from the IRS, but a branch of the IRS kind of, but independent in the way that they will not, their number one uh, target reason is for the taxpayer. It's not for the IRS. They're advocating for you only. And like I said, it's a free service, which is a great service overall because it's free. But just understand because that it's free and it may take longer because they're dealing with a larger volume because it's free. But basically, you have a right to fair and just tax system. If you feel that anything is going sideways and you're not understanding anything, or the IRS is really being combative and you can't get any help and you're unable to get a representative because you can't afford it or otherwise, you can get the taxpayer advocate service to assist you in anything that you could. So those are the 10 rights. I hope you guys, this is a relatively quick one. I hope you guys understood. Again, my name is Kerrina O'Connor with KAKE Financial with a K. I'm here and I'm going to do another live very soon, but let me know what you think about, like, which one of your taxpayer rights did you resonate with the most? Which one are you going to make sure that you're getting at all times, especially when dealing with the IRS? Because sometimes, like I said, most of the times when you're dealing with the IRS and it's when you're having issues that your rights really need to be known. When things are going good and you're getting your refunds or you know exactly how much you owe and you're paying your estimated taxes on time, all of that. For the most part, you're not really dealing with the IRS like that as much. But for those where it's the IRS is doing you wrong, this is where you really would need to know those 10 Bill of Rights. So again, if this is a situation where you feel like you are in, either you owe a tax that you can't pay in full to the IRS or your state, or you haven't filed for the last, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 years, please book a link in the bio, call our office, and we can be able to get some type of help for you. Our office number is 954-761-5253. Again, bye everyone.